It was a cold winter night, probably one of the darkest December nights I had ever seen. I was 17, just a curious teenager, a bit too intrigued by the things others feared to look at. It was supposed to be a peaceful night at home. Everyone else had long gone to bed, leaving me alone with nothing but my laptop and an unquenchable thirst for mystery. You know how it goes. One minute you're watching cat videos on YouTube, and the next you've fallen into a deep rabbit hole, one where you're too far gone to turn back. That night I stumbled upon a video titled Dark Web Horror Stories, What They Don't Want You to Know. At first I didn't think much of it. I thought it was just another spooky video designed to spook out gullible teenagers like me, but something about it, I don't know. It felt different. The faceless narrator told chilling stories of horrors just beyond our reach. Stories of people like me who'd gotten far too curious. I shouldn't have watched it, but I was hooked. The images they painted in my mind didn't scare me. They intrigued me. The dark web, a place where horrors waited just a click away. The more I thought about it, the more I wanted to see it for myself. Could these things be real? Could I really find the forbidden, hidden corners of the internet, the ones where things went bump in the night? I did some research, found out that to access the dark web, you needed a special browser called Tor, and you also had to be careful, which meant a VPN. I hesitated for a while, nerves shooting through my chest, but curiosity won out. I was 17, full of pride, thinking I was invincible, above the fears others had. So that night, with the entire house shrouded in silence, I snuck out of bed, cracked open my laptop, and set everything up. I entered the dark web. At first, nothing happened. It was just what I expected. A chaotic maze of sites with cryptic random names and strange descriptions. Private chats, secret marketplaces, encrypted forums. Nothing too unusual. But then, something caught my eye, a site that didn't look like the others. The screen was completely black, the text barely readable, as if someone went out of their way to make sure it wasn't found. There was no homepage, no welcome message, just one link. It was plain, simple, enter. My heart pounded. It was as if the link was calling to me. I paused for a moment, wondering what the hell I was doing, but my curiosity had already overwhelmed any logical thought. My hand clicked the link. Within moments, a small window popped up on my screen. Please accept our terms and conditions to continue. 2 buttons appeared. Accept and exit. Every part of me screamed to click exit. Every fiber of my being told me to leave before it was too late. But I didn't. I clicked accept. A new screen loaded, and I felt the hairs on my neck stand. It asked for my age. I didn't know why, but without thinking, I typed 18. Why? Maybe because I thought that was what they wanted to hear. But I didn't even realize what I was getting into until the screen changed. No text, no instructions. Just a black screen, flickering slightly, as it loaded something that felt wrong. I felt an icy weight settle in my stomach. Then it started. A dark green screen appeared, followed by an image, a vast barren desert stretching out endlessly under a bruised sky, as if the earth itself had been abandoned. It was so empty that the silence felt deafening. I could almost hear the wind howling across the desolation. It was beautiful. And then I saw the car. A dusty old sedan skimming across the sand, the tires kicking up thick clouds behind it. The car skidded to a halt. 2 men emerged from it, dragging something. At first I thought it was a bundle of cloth, but as they moved into the frame it became painfully clear. It was a person. 2 people, bound, their bodies limp, as though they were no longer human. The men dragged them like rag dolls, and the air around me grew cold. I leaned closer to the screen, trying to make sense of it. One of the men bent down, pulling the lifeless bodies into the sand. He didn't look at them as he shoved them down, as if this was routine. The other man returned to the car and came back with a metal canister. The sun gleamed off of it for a second before he opened it. My stomach turned. I had seen this kind of scene in films, heard the stories, but never in real life. I felt a sense of dread wash over me. I knew what was coming. Then the man pulled out a match. He struck it, and in an instant, flames erupted, licking the bodies. The fire roared to life, dancing in the air as the figures writhed, their flesh burning. But there was no sound. The fire crackled, but there was no scream, no wail, no cry of agony, only silence. It was the silence that made it worse. The flames consumed them hungrily. I felt myself go numb, unable to look away. I wanted to scream, to stop watching, but I couldn't. And then, as if he had felt my presence through the screen, one of the men turned slowly, his eyes locked with mine, cold, lifeless. For a split second it felt like he was staring right through me. And then he raised something, a piece of cardboard. On it, written in stark red letters, "Do you like watching?" I froze. My body went cold, and a heavy, suffocating sensation washed over me. I tried to close the laptop, but my fingers wouldn't move. My heartbeat was thunderous in my chest as I realized I had just watched something I was never meant to see. Something so real, too real. I slammed the laptop shut with trembling hands, my entire body shaking, but even then I could feel the weight of the screen, as if the green light was still flickering at me from inside the darkness. I lay in bed that night, too terrified to sleep. My mind replayed those images, those bodies burning, the eyes staring through the screen, the question that chilled me to my core. I couldn't get it out of my head. It was like I had invited something in, something that watched me, waiting for me to return. The next morning I tried to convince myself it was all a sick, staged thing, a video meant to scare people. But deep down I knew the truth. It wasn't fake. I deleted Tor. I erased the VPN. I did everything I could to bury it. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I swear I see that green light flickering in the corner of my vision. It's like they're still watching, waiting. I don't know if it's just paranoia, or if they really are out there. I was 17 when I first heard about the dark web. It was one of those late-night rabbit holes, you know, when you're half-dazed from clicking link after link, diving deeper into a world you never intended to discover. At first, it was just some random videos, dark web horror stories, eerie tales told by faceless narrators, warning of the things that lurked just beyond the veil. That night, one video stood out. A faceless man, his voice cold and detached, spoke of things I couldn't even comprehend. He described sights that shouldn't exist, horrors so vile they didn't belong in our world. I couldn't look away. Instead of scaring me off, it pulled me deeper. How real was it? Could I actually see these things for myself? The thrill was intoxicating, and the mystery. It was like a temptation I couldn't resist. I didn't think twice. I'd heard enough about the hidden corners of the web, where nothing was as it seemed. Everyone else around me was asleep. It felt like the perfect time to take a deeper dive. I had an old copy of Tor, a browser built to slip through the cracks of the internet unnoticed, and a VPN to cover my tracks. I thought it would be harmless. After all, I wasn't looking for anything illegal, just some old books, maybe a few rare finds. That was the plan. But then, curiosity got the best of me. I started browsing, flipping through directory listings on the dark web, each one more cryptic than the last. I wasn't looking for anything dangerous, or so I thought. I came across one that stood out: Sanctum Services. No flashy logos, no bright colors, just stark white text on a black background. The description was vague, almost too vague. Items for protection, enforcement, and elimination. I couldn't stop myself from clicking. The page loaded slowly, painfully so, like the site was contemplating whether it even wanted me there. The screen flickered and then settled into a black background. The words "loading" blinked in a way that felt deliberate. like the site was studying me, deciding whether I should be allowed to continue. My hands trembled, but I couldn't look away. Finally, the page loaded. It looked like an e-commerce site, only far darker, less inviting. There were no sale banners, no warm greetings. Instead, there were categories like weapons, specialists, connections. Each one felt heavier than the last, like a shadow pressing against my chest. Before I could process what I was seeing, a pop-up flashed on my screen. This site has attempted to access restricted functions. I dismissed it, still too intrigued to care. But then, my screen went black. For a moment it was just me. My face reflected in the dark screen, and the eerie silence of the room. And then the webcam light flickered on. My heart dropped into my stomach. The small green light that usually went unnoticed was now glaring at me. Someone was watching me. Worse, they wanted me to know it. My hands froze, hovering above the keys. Who were they? What did they want? Then, like a slow burn, the text started to appear on the screen. It typed itself, letter by letter, slow and deliberate. Why did you come here? Every cell in my body screamed to shut the laptop, to disconnect, to leave. But I couldn't. My fingers trembled as I typed. I was just looking. The cursor blinked, waiting for a response. I barely had time to think before the text changed. Leave now. My breath hitched, and I tried to close the window, my hands flying across the keyboard. I spammed the keys, hitting the escape button over and over. But the webcam light blinked again, almost as if it were mocking me. Finally, the screen went dark. I couldn't move. I just sat there, paralyzed in the silence that enveloped me. It felt like the walls were closing in, like the very air was thick with something I couldn't name. But the worst part? I knew it wasn't over. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I couldn't even touch the laptop. The webcam light had burned itself into my mind as though someone was watching me, studying me. Every noise, every creak of the floorboards felt amplified. I couldn't sleep. The haunting feeling of eyes on me was too much. 2 years passed, and I convinced myself it was just a glitch. A weird thing with my webcam, maybe. So when I found myself back on tour, browsing cautiously, I convinced myself that the past was behind me. I stuck to what I knew, the Imperial Library of Trainer, a place known for rare books and obscure records. I wasn't looking for trouble. I had nearly forgotten the shadow that still lingered in my memory until I saw it again. The listing for Sanctum services appeared again, like some forgotten nightmare crawling out of the dark. My heart froze. I knew I shouldn't click it, but the temptation was too strong. I clicked. This time, the page loaded instantly, no delay, no ominous waiting. But something was wrong. The categories had changed. Live feeds. My pulse quickened. I didn't want to know what that meant. I clicked. A small window appeared, showing a list of streams. Some were live, others were offline. My eyes scanned the titles. Room 34, Facility Z, Hallway 12. Most of the rooms were empty, but one was not. It showed a figure bound to a chair, bruised and bloodied. His eyes were hollow, staring at the camera with a gaze that pierced through me. It was too real, too disturbing. I'd heard the stories, the ones about live feeds, auctions, and people being sold for entertainment. But seeing it with my own eyes, that was something else. I tried to close the window, my stomach churning, but then my screen flickered again, and the webcam light turned on. This time there was no black screen, just me staring back at my reflection, frozen in horror. Welcome back. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing, but the feeling didn't go away. For the next week, I couldn't touch my computer. Every time I glanced at it, I swore I saw the faint glow of the screen, like it was waiting for me to come back, like it was watching me. Then, 2 nights later, I woke to the faint glow of my laptop screen across the room. I hadn't left it on. I hadn't even touched it. But there it was, the screen faintly illuminating the room, and on it, a single word in bold, blood-red letters. Run. I wish I could say I ran, but I didn't. I just stood there, frozen in place, staring at the screen as it slowly, eerily faded to black. I still remember the first time I felt the pull of the deep web. It was 5 years ago, a night just like any other, when a late-night rabbit hole led me to something darker. I had spent hours reading about it, one article after another, about hidden places only accessible through something called Tor. The stories all sounded like urban legends, secret sites full of things you'd never find on the normal internet. But curiosity, that dark, forbidden curiosity, got the best of me. I'd heard whispers of what lay beyond the surface web. Stolen goods, dark marketplaces, and even worse, places where you could get anything, do anything. I told myself it was just some strange place for out-of-print books or rare finds. But as soon as I opened Tor, I realized I had no idea what I was walking into. The first place I was told to visit was the Hidden Wiki. It wasn't flashy or designed to draw you in. It was just a plain page with links to sites with names I could barely pronounce. Most of the topics were disturbing, some so grotesque I almost closed the window, but something kept me scrolling. The tone was what stuck with me. It was detached, clinical even. This wasn't some underworld written about with shock or anger. This was just normal. Then I came across a link that caught my eye. The Bug Catchers Cult. I won't get into what it was about, but the descriptions were so graphic, so deeply wrong that I almost felt like I'd made a mistake. I quickly closed it, but my hands shook. This wasn't a place for books, this was something darker. And then at the bottom of the page, I saw it. A link that wasn't like the others. No description, no catchy title, just a cold, unmarked URL. Against all instincts, I clicked on it. The page flickered. For a moment I thought maybe I'd triggered some kind of error. But then the screen loaded, revealing a single sentence in stark white text. Are you ready to see the truth? My heart pounded in my chest. The screen seemed to hum with an unnatural energy, like it was waiting for something. I hesitated, feeling a pull in my gut. And then before I could stop myself, I typed, I don't know. The words on the screen changed immediately, as if it was reading my thoughts. Curiosity comes at a price. I felt my stomach drop. Then the images started. First, they were just flashes, twisted faces, contorted bodies, scenes that didn't make sense. But then they grew clearer. Faces that weren't human, half-finished, grotesque, as if they'd been stitched together in the dark. A figure bound to a chair, face bruised and eyes hollow with terror. The images spiraled faster, each one more disturbing than the last. My hand shook as I tried to look away, but I couldn't. Something in me. Then came the live feed. It was dimly lit, but it didn't matter. In the center of the room sat a chair, empty. But as I stared, a figure appeared. A person, hunched over, bound and silent. Their face wasn't visible at first, but then the camera shifted, revealing a face I couldn't forget. It was Marcos, a name I recognized from one of the old forums, a name linked to the Sanctum service, a legend I had read about in hushed whispers. Marcos, the enforcer, the one who dealt with problems, no questions asked. But something was off. The shadows moved behind him. Not normal shadows, though. These were alive. They shifted in the dark corners, watching, waiting. You could be here, the text appeared on the screen. My heart skipped a beat. It was like the screen was taunting me. I slammed the laptop shut, the sound of the metal clanging too loud in the still room. But then I heard something. A faint beep. It was coming from the laptop. Slowly, I opened it, and there, in the center of the screen, was a single line of text. Don't try to hide. We see you. I froze. I ripped the battery out of the laptop, my hands shaking, my breath coming in short gasps. But the message didn't stop. My mind raced. How could they know? I wasn't even sure if I was dreaming. Was I being watched right now from somewhere out there in the void? I listened to the silence, to the way every creak in the house felt amplified, as though I was being stalked. I didn't sleep for days. Each time I opened my laptop, I checked for any signs of strange programs running in the background, for anything that felt off. But nothing ever showed up. Yet every time I closed my eyes, I felt it, the creeping dread, the sense that someone somewhere was waiting for me to slip up. Then one night, almost a year later, I found myself on tour again. I thought it was over, that I was safe, but I wasn't. I clicked on a link titled Sanctum Live. I knew it was a mistake the moment the page loaded. The first feed I clicked on showed a room, but it wasn't empty. Someone was tied to a chair in the center, a man named David. His face was familiar. He'd been one of the bug catchers, someone I'd read about. His lips were sealed with a strange waxy substance, his eyes wide open in silent horror. A shadow moved behind him, tall, looming. Then another feed popped up. This one wasn't live, but it showed something that made my blood run cold. It was an image of my own face, captured through my webcam. No green light this time, just the cold reflection of me, staring back at myself, terrified. "We know who you are," the text read. I slammed the laptop shut again, but it didn't matter. The fear I'd felt before was nothing compared to what I felt now. I could feel the eyes on me, watching me, waiting. I could feel Marcos's presence in the room, even though I knew he wasn't there. It's been months since that night, but I still hear the faintest noise sometimes. A click, a whisper, a shadow that moves just out of sight. The worst part? I don't think I'll ever be free of them. They're out there, somewhere, and they know my name.